Alright, another video of G6 problems, I guess. Not a problem. This video is doing the brakes on it. Had to do all 4 brakes because the back ones were completely destroyed. Going metal on metal at that point. So you can focus that. And it was making a terrible noise in the back because, well, mainly this is metal on metal on some of it. A little bit of material there, but that's it. What happened was that like pieces would get lodged in there because they were just crumbling off, and it would just make terrible noises, like grinding, crunching noises, and it just sounded terrible going on the road. But anyway, changing the brakes, it's fairly easy as long as you know what you're doing. So it took me a little bit to figure out. Some cars on the calipers, the piston right here. Some cars, it's just all it is held in by pressure on some cars, and although also on those same cars you have a drum brake setup inside of here, inside of the rotor. There will be a drum brake setup inside this little area, along with your discs. But on the G6, that is not the case, and it's kind of a nice change because I've had to do about 3 brakes in the past 3 months, and like all 4 corners for each vehicle, and this one's kind of tired of dealing with springs, so, and the drum brake setup. So anyway, back to this thing that I found out. So if you're just changing pads, you know, on a lot of newer vehicles too, you'll have this. The caliper will unbolt. It's facing like that. The caliper unbolt here and here, and it'll swing off to the side, and you can swap out your pads. I never do that. If I change brakes, it'll be rotors and pads because this is the old rotor and it's in pretty rough shape. So it's not that much more money to get new rotors anyway. So anyway, but if you were to do that, that's how you do that. Then you have this bracket right here and your 2 pads. Change that later on so you can see what the hell I'm doing here. Then you have your 2 pads here and here, and they just clip in there with these 2 springs. Normally I change out the springs, but the new pads didn't come with springs, so I'm just going to leave those in there. There's nothing wrong with them. Put a little bit of grease on them, make sure they don't make a lot of noise. Don't get the grease on the pads or on the rotor. Make sure you clean your rotor off. Plenty of videos out there on how to do that stuff. So, really neat trick for G6s. I don't know if there's any other GM vehicles. I'm sure the ones that share the same platform have the same stuff. A neat trick for the pistons. The last car I did on a Lexus, like an '01 Lexus, and the piston, in order for it to, you can compress them sometimes with a tool similar to this thing. I tried doing it with this one, and obviously it didn't work. I broke my tool, which is fine. I rarely ever use that one. But another thing you can do is, if you have that type of caliper, is you just place an old pad there. This one's used, obviously. Place an old used pad on top of the piston. Just kind of give it a tap with a little extension, hammer, that kind of stuff. It'll usually tap it back down into place, because you have to compress it in order to get it back around the pads. The new pads are because they have more meat on them. Anyway, so these, I don't know if you can see it, but there are 2 depressions in it, one here and one there. And the reason for that is, focus again, is when you take a needle nose or 2 screwdrivers or something like that. Anything really. And you can put it in there, and you just, what it does, I can't do it with one hand, but what it does is it'll screw it back in. Apparently it's driven off of a screw, because I'm assuming that's what this is back in here. There's a screw mechanism, because it also operates the e-brake. E-brake is hooked up to it too. So on this car, the e-brake is driven off of a cable, which is attached to this. You don't have to remove it like I did. I was just trying to figure out how it worked. Anyway, so what I would do if you're changing pads and rotors, what I would do is I would just crack the bleeder screw open. You might not even have to do that. You might just be able to just take the cap off the reservoir up in front and just screw that back into place, and it might just screw back in. But if that doesn't work, crack the bleeder screw open over right here, and it'll, this with the paraneedle nose or whatever you want to use, it'll screw back into place fairly easily, actually. So just thought I'd post a video of it if somebody was having issues with it, wondering why it wasn't compressing because of using a compressor wasn't working. That's why. It's because it's screw driven, and it's a neat little thing, I guess. Alright.